So I think a lot of my growing into the woman that I am today comes back full circle to being a nanny to so many children that were experiencing inner turmoil like I did. I grew into a career unknowingly, started out buying CDs to becoming a consistent, supportive, loving, empathetic, wonderful person to just be around children that are navigating either loss of a parent or divorce, living in separate households, tumultuous relationships between their parents. And in that aspect, there are several instances where my involvement as a nanny and floating between households was truly beneficial for everyone and primarily the children. For one example, I nannied for a family that was very much similar to my parents. They did not speak to each other. And when they did, it was very, very ugly. And you could tell that it just really weighed on the kids and they didn't really want to interact with their parents when they had been interacting with one another. And their son left their soccer cleats at their dad's house and he had a big game that day. And I offered to come in a little bit earlier and I contacted the ex-husband and I just said, hey, so-and-so, your son left his cleats. I don't know if you're okay with your ex-wife going over there, but I'm going to assume you're not. And I was wondering if it'd be okay if I stopped by and grabbed those cleats on my way to the soccer game to pick him up for his game. And of course it was, yes, I don't want her at my house. I would much rather you go over there. I went, I grabbed the cleats. What could have been an insane afternoon and chaotic and just ugly communication between parents was quickly squashed by my ability to just float between the households. And at the time, I would spend a week at the mom's house with her routine, her schedule, her rules, and then I'd follow the kids and be at her ex-husband's house and follow his routine and his rules. And I think as long as you are offering consistency between both households, you're going to be setting yourself up for so much more success with or without a nanny. But a nanny is going to be that consistent, stable resource for your children. As another example, there was a child that I was nannying that was acting out at school, just hitting and kicking and biting kids in his class. And nobody for the life of them could figure out what's going on. The doctor said he was healthy. We pulled back the sugar and it dawned on me one day that he just really wasn't doing well with the different rules in each household. And I realized, it didn't take me very long, that the dad was putting him to bed at, 9:30 at night, whereas at his mom's house, like he's getting ready for bed at 7, in bed at 7:30, asleep and lights out at 8. And so I could see that very big difference in just that piece of his routine that was contributing to that behavior, causing him to act out. And so, one of the big things about being a nanny is having those conversations with parents of, I'm noticing this is what's happening with your child. This is my recommendation. I'm happy to talk with both of you, or if you just talk with one parent, this is what I would recommend doing. I think you may need to be putting your son on a schedule that's similar to your ex's schedule. And, there's always that little bit of, no, I don't. My house is fine. I don't know what you're talking about. But, eventually they come around because they realize, yes, my son is acting out. And I am realizing this is really hard, especially, when you're scheduled to leave at 8:30 and he's still up and wired because I can't get him to bed till 9:30. And so we made that adjustment at the dad's house. Behavior went away at school. We started paying attention, treating us classmates better. And it's just like that little tiny piece right there that really contributed to having a more homeostasis family dynamic between the households, even though the families really, the parents really didn't work well together. And so the other really great benefit of those of you that are going through divorce, you can share the nanny and it kind of lowers your expenses as well. So each of you can pay your nanny. You don't have to pay your ex to pay the nanny. You can each have that responsibility and make sure you take care of the person that's taking care of your household and your kids. And then in terms of training, a lot of my network and who I've communicated and contacted with over the last 20 years, we're all professionals in this area. Just like you'd hire a CPA to do your taxes, you hire a doctor to help you with your health. There are people out here known as nannies and household managers that this is what we were born to do. We were born to help you with your kids because this is what we love to do. And whether we have a teaching background or a daycare background, or like myself, where we've just been a nanny our entire lives, we come from many years of experience. And, I am putting together a training program just for a divorce nanny certification right now, just to kind of teach nannies around the country that this is an option to become more prepared and have more tools in their belt, if you will, to handle such difficult conversations of being that neutral party between parents and not getting sucked into he said, she said, or I'm the better parent, or they're doing this wrong, those kinds of things, and just really focusing on the kids. And as nannies, if any of you are listening, I know that many of you could probably support me in this statement that a lot of your children, a lot of these families' children are confiding in us. They're talking to us about really big feelings and really big things that they are kind of too scared to talk to you about. I had a little girl I used to take her family's dogs on walks, and she would join me every now and then. There was one walk in particular, she opened up to me and said, I'm just so sad about what's happening and my parents divorcing. But anytime I want to go talk to my mom, she's so angry and she's so mad and she just talks horribly about my dad. Then I feel bad because those things she's talking about my dad, those are things that I do. These are things that I also, I may not be, an adult man, but also like I find myself sometimes maybe not sharing all of the truth like my dad does or whatever, she said in the time. But the point is she came to me and said, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to navigate this. What do I do? And I just remember listening and going, hey, so-and-so, I'm so grateful that you felt comfortable talking with me. I think the next best step would be to either talk with your mom, and I'm happy to be present, or let's talk to both of your parents, and I'm also happy to be present. And to kind of end that story in a very quick manner, we were able to sit down with her mom. And I remember she was sitting there kind of shaking at the kitchen table. And I said, you don't have to be scared. This is your mom. Nobody loves you more in their life than your mom and your dad. And, she finally was able to kind of open up and say, I just don't feel comfortable. I wish you would stop talking bad about my dad. I really want to find a way for us all to get along. Maybe we can have one night a week where we try and have dinner together, or at holidays, maybe we can have dinner, those kinds of things. And, she reached out to me not too long ago to say thank you. And, she's in college now. And she's just like, thank you so much for having that conversation with me and my parents. She still thinks of it to this day. So those are a few examples of how I, as a nanny, infiltrated homes of divorce and my contributions. And it's not just me. There are so many of us out here that are happy and willing to help because this is what we were born to do.
Wow, there's so much packed into that story that you just said. And I'm going to reflect on now, this is the third person that I have interviewed that have said something similar. And you told it in a story, but I'm going to remind our listeners that when you disparage your ex and you tell your children that they are bad, that your ex is bad, you have to remember that they are 50% you and 50% of them. And this is the third interview that I have done where I have had a guest say exactly that. The child that you love dearly, when you disparage their father or disparage their mother, you are basically telling them they are 50% bad because they are 50% of that individual. And you just told the most beautiful story of that in an actual dialogue that you had with a child. That is what is going through their minds. So again, if you get one thing out of this, do not disparage your to be ex or your ex to your children. Those are adult problems and adult thoughts, and they do not have any place in your children's head. It is, they only need to know how much you love them, how much their father loves them. Yeah, you might not 100% be on the same page with the way you parent or the way that you approach, parenting, but it doesn't mean that this child needs to view their other parent as bad. That moves into something called alienation, where it gets so bad that the child doesn't even want to spend any time with the other spouse. And again, I'm going to say it frankly, that's a very selfish thing to do. If you are practicing alienation because you believe it makes you feel better for them not to like their other parent, that is a purely selfish move on your part. I'm going to be firm on that because the children deserve to be able to feel free to love their parents equally.